So let's say together in unison, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Okay, thank you. So we have a ritual for All Souls Day, which of course was last Sunday, but since we didn't meet on that Sunday, actually it was a couple of days ago, since we didn't meet then, we transfer it to today. And this is a ritual that was written by Christine Robinson, a noted Unitarian author. At this darkening time of the year, our thoughts turn to things past, to life retreating, to those who are no longer with us. Images come to our minds, images of dear companions who once graced our lives, loved ones we miss, and persons whose lives made an impact on our lives. Of all those who were here, contributing, caring, and are now gone. Our memories bring forth joy and sadness. Let us not push these feelings away, for our recollections attest to the enduring importance of these friends, this love, and our memories. May these brave and lovely spirits live again in our tender thoughts and prove that death and distance are powerless to sever the bonds that connect truly loving hearts. And now I'd like for us to recall to mind those members of our community who have died within the past year. We remember especially Nina Lee Kinney. Are there others that I'm not remembering? I don't think so. No. And we remember loved ones or friends who have died. If anyone has someone you'd like to share, please do so. Maria and I lost our beloved Aunt Lou, Maria's aunt. She died maybe about 2 weeks ago, I guess. And I found out yesterday or day before that an old and dear friend of mine that I hadn't talked to in a while died last week. So kind of a sad week in a way for me because of that. But much beloved and lived a great life. What other, anyone else lose a friend or family member recently that you'd like to share? Yes, Dave.
In the increasing theme of my life that says that permanence is an illusion,
Yeah.
I got through a roundabout channels the word that one of my former fiancés had passed away.
Oh, wow.
So bringing mortality to mind.
That's a sobering thought, yeah. Wow. Yes, Nick.
Harry Goodhart of Triumph.
Harry Goodhart of Triumph.
Did he die? Oh.
Yeah. So, you want to tell us a little bit about Harry?
Harry was a real strong person. He was a real pivotal person in our community. He had the famous antique bookstore, and he was president of the Lanier Library for years. Very dedicated to Triumph. Very dedicated.
Okay. A pillar of the community. Yes, Nan, what were you going to say?
I just don't want to forget Colin Powell.
Colin Powell, thank
Very
you.
special person in history.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. We're going to come to our family members a little later in our service this morning, but I wanted us to have a chance to mention people who have died within the past year that we can think of and that are important to us, special to us. Okay. Spirit of life, whom we know best in our own loving and our being loved, hold us as we remember those we have loved and those who have loved us. May our gratitude sparkle in our lives. May our tears lubricate our souls. Help us to know that we are not alone in our grieving. Help us also to come to that peaceful place in which we can take what we learned from those who have gone before us into our own lives. Remind us that we too are mortal and that that the only enduring legacy we leave is the love that shines through our lives. Amen. Amen. Okay, so wow, I had like a insight this past week and thinking about the sermon for today, and I want to try something out. I hope it works. You know, usually when I think about All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day in the church context, that ties into resurrection, and that's all well and good. But in a Unitarian sort of a humanistic framework that doesn't really get so vertical as it is interested in being horizontal, I had to think about this. You can't relax and kind of fall back on cliche or mantras or dogma, and which was really awesome because it helped me see something that I don't think I had seen before. So I'm going to offer a reflection on the Feast of All Souls that I think is an antidote to our present state of affairs in life. Hold that thought. It seems that we've been, as long as we've been alive, human beings have been fascinated by death. For many ancient cultures, the chasm between the living and dead was but a thin veil. But for the most part, in our modern secular age, we live in a reality that the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Ernst Becker describes as the denial of death. His book of that same title, when I read it back in the late 80s, was a game changer for me. A quotation from the book, it won the Pulitzer in 1974. A quotation from the book is that man is of nature and hopelessly in it. He is dual, up in the stars, yet housed in a heart-pumping, breath-gasping body that once belonged to fish. We live in a culture that denies the reality of death by fetishizing youth. Maria and I are often just kind of humored to see some of the TV commercials, you see on the news at night, especially the one about Botox. They have this elaborate commercial about how Botox can take care of your wrinkles and everything. And all of the actors in the commercial are in their 30s. I mean, come on, people. Becker says that we deny death when we create our immortality projects. And immortality projects desperately try to overcome the fundamental human reality that every being shares. The key tenet of the forgiveness trainings that I do all over the place, and that is this. The biggest problem with life is that none of us are going to get out alive. So we have to make peace with that. And I don't want to sound flip, I'm just saying, this commemoration of our ancestors and the loved ones who have gone before not only bring them into our hearts and remind us of how they have formed us, but it also helps us to acknowledge our own mortality, because we too, like them, someday, hopefully, will be remembered by loved ones who come behind us. When we were in New York for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I participated in something called the Calling of the Names ceremony at St. Paul's Chapel, where I served. And what happens there is we call the names of all the people who died on 9/11 in New York. And then we call the names of all those who have died since. And I thought, wow, well, if they keep going long enough, and hopefully it's a long time, someday someone's going to call my name, maybe, It's sobering to be reminded of that, but it's also liberating. In our seeking to become immortal, Becker says we make a killing in the field of business and on the field of war. We see money and military power as a sacrament that we dispense in our efforts to become immortal. Some of you probably remember from college or high school English, the English Romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. His dates are 1792 to 1822. He didn't live very long. But he wrote this poem called Ozymandias. You guys remember that poem? Well, I have, I hope it'll be a treat for you. I invited someone to read this poem for us today, if you'll indulge me. That's Becker's denial of death.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless lakes of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Nothing beside remains, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Sands stretch far away.
So I think we will be the only faith community meeting this Sunday morning who has a clip from Breaking Bread. Well, I wanted to play it once, not a bunch. So Ozymandias is the pharaoh, Ramses II. This is the statue that Shelley wrote about. It was recovered in 1818 and placed in the British Museum in 1821. This great pharaoh who ruled all of the land. He created all these monuments to his greatness. And you can almost hear the sarcasm in Bryan Cranston's voice as he remembers Ozymandias. Ramses II is also the pharaoh to whom Moses and Aaron cried out, "The God of Israel has said, 'Let my people go.'" It's the same pharaoh. Very interesting. So Becker says that the denial of death leads to mental illness. Depression is for folks who have a sense that their immortality project is failing. Consistently being reminded of our mortality, our biological body, and feelings of impermanence. Schizophrenia is a state in which the person becomes so obsessed with his own picture of reality that doesn't square with the real world, and we just kind of live with that picture, and therefore we split ourselves off from what's really going on. The ancient Stoic philosophers, and as you all know, I'm a big fan, had a corrective for this mental illness, and it's called memento mori. Remember your death. Now that's not a really happy thought, unless you realize that when you remember what Albert Camus said, that we all have this thing called the plague. He has this graphic novel called The Plague. I had to read it in college as a philosophy major, and it's like really disgusting, but he makes an important point. We all have the plague, and the plague is mortality. And then when we realize that we have mortality, that's our lot, he says that only when we realize that mortality is our lot, then we are able to fully live, to live fully in the time that we have, the time that we've been given. When we wake up and realize that we are mortal, we are inspired to live intentionally. And as we remember our death, we remember also those of our loved ones who have died. And we remember that we too, like them, have this fundamental human experience shared, that of our mortality. We too, like them, will pass on. So instead of trying to transcend our deaths, by acknowledging our mortality, we are empowered to live fully in this present moment. So, in honor of the loved ones that we have brought to honor, and in honor of the loved ones that I ask you to remember today, I want to invite you, those of you who brought pictures, and if you didn't bring a picture, come forward and tell us about your loved one, your ancestor. And there's no special order. Anyone who wants to start may start. And as we begin this, I want to share one little story with you, one of my favorite stories about Dr. King. And this is why this mortality theme is so important for us today on remembering the Feast of All Souls. He often gave speeches in which he said, just as everyone has a birth date, so too everyone will have a death date. Right? And the main thing separating those two dates is the little dash in the middle. And then his sermon was powerful. What are you going to do with your dash? How will you live your life intentionally? How will you embrace the wisdom of your ancestors? How will you impart that wisdom to your children, your children's children, for the next generations? So as we honor our own future passing, not in a morbid way, but in a tender, celebratory way, let's remember the folks who have gone before us. So I'll start. This is my mom. Her name is Annie Laura Harris. She died in 2005. She was 73, I think. She was full of life and joy and mischief. That's where I get my mischief from. This is balloons from one of her birthday celebrations. Who'd like to go next? Yeah.
This is my mother, Joyce Corn, a British subject, and I was born in England in 1943, and she came to the United States and absorbed the American culture because my father was an American soldier, and she died 1 month short of 100 years old. And here she is doing her favorite occupation, crossword puzzles. I also have my recent dog, Becca, who just died a few months ago. And the Fishers were one of the caretakers of him, and my dear heart is part of him, her, gone now.
Thank you. Who else? Yeah. Oh, Nick. Yeah.
Sorry if I jumped in front of
No,
somebody.
it's good.
This is a picture of my parents, Roy Lund and Mary Lund. And I have this picture of them on the beach pretty short time after they met. And I love to look at it because they're just so dashing, and I like to look into the love that I know they felt for each other and all the life they had in front of them.
Thank you.
This is a picture of my dad. He is Arthur Lewis Fisher Sr., and you're looking at Junior. But you may call me Nick, because he blessed me with the name of Nick rather than Artie as a little boy. He was called Bud. But the most special thing about my father, which I didn't realize until later in my life, he passed away prematurely at 63, and I've quite a bit past that time frame, so I can relate to the age factor. But anyway, most important about my father and my life now is I didn't have a chance to thank him for all that he did for me in his life when I was a child, because he passed away before I had children. I had three boys who were all doing well, and I now understand how much he did and what he struggled through running a family company and making the money for the family and all the stuff that we did as kids. It's just amazing when you have your own kids and you look at what you're trying to do for them, you say, how did my father ever afford to do this and that and this and that? So it was a blessing to have him as my dad. He did go away prematurely, but I got a lot from him. I call him kind of my mentor. That's who I like to follow after.
That's beautiful, Nate. Thank you. Yeah.
This is sort of a bad picture.
Oh, how cute.
It's my Jewish grandfather, who
Oh.
was a love story of my Protestant grandmother and my grandfather, whom I never knew, or my grandmother, as for that matter, but he died in World War I, which was a big tragedy. However, had he not died, I might not be here because he was Jewish. My mother was discriminated against as a child, and then my grandmother remarried, or married,
Mhm.
a man who bribed officials to say that he was my mother's father. So,
Wow.
so it saved her life and saved mine. I mean, and
Wow.
I wouldn't have been born had she gone to a concentration camp.
Yeah.
So although I have a lot of dear relatives in my life who have passed on, I'm just so grateful to him.
Mm.
I mean, and you think of the tragedies that happened and how devastating it is that, you know, for my grandmother that he died, and yet it was a blessing.
Yeah.
And you never know what tragedy is going to turn out to be a blessing.
It's true. Yeah,
So
thank you
thank
for
you.
that. It's beautiful. What a testimony of courage. I love that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Who else? Yes, Nan.
Bob and I brought pictures of our parents' graduation. We have all four of them. Their graduation from high school pictures. I like to think of them as being young like that.
Yeah.
My dad was killed in an accident on his way to work one time, and he was 43 years old. It was the month after Bob and I was married. We're married, and I'm just grateful that I had Bob when that happened, because he really saved my life. I don't know what I would have done without him. And I figured I had to bring one other one, if I might, because I talked about her so much here at church. Whenever I say, well, my grandmother Fortner would say this or that, okay? Well, I brought grandmother Fortner so you can see her too.
You guys have to come and see this picture.
Yeah, she was a real card. I just, she was funny. She had great faith. She taught me about death early, I think, in a way, because she wasn't afraid of it. And neither am I. And so she's just one of those kind of people that you remember all your life. And I'm trying to pass her on down through the family, too, that people will remember her for a long time. She lived to be 93.
Wow. We won't soon forget her. That picture says it all. Bob, let's see your parents.
These are my parents, Earl Covert and Ruth Edwards Covert. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. He was a hard worker. He taught me the value of hanging in there when things don't go right. Keep trying, keep on trying. He died just short of his 70th birthday. And I think a lot of that was because he was a chain smoker. I'm not sure. Again, what he taught me lives on. And I hope I can measure up to the standards that he had in many ways. Mrs. Ruth Edwards Covert, my mom, and she was the type of person who, again, you know, she had another boy beside me, and he did well. And Ruth, what can I say? She was the one that put me in tune with music. I guess many of you know that I taught music for almost 20 years. And,
Plays a mean sax, too.
yeah. And she started out, you know, with just little lullabies and songs like that, singing them. Then she familiarized me with the keyboard. I'll never be able to play the piano like she could, but I owe a big debt of gratitude to both of my parents.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Bob. Who else? And if you didn't bring a picture, that's okay. You can stand up where you are and tell us. Yes?
It's very timely for me to see all of these photographs because Robin and I are just back from Florida where I was helping to sort through an awful lot of my mother's stuff that needs organization, and she's become the neck of the funnel of 3 generations of families. A lot of pictures. And it occurs to me, I return to this theme of permanence is an illusion. At least these are somewhat permanent objects. How many of us, show of hands, carry one of these things?
Yeah.
And how many take photographs with this thing, right? All right, how many of you had more than 2 photographs printed taken with this? Ma'am? Okay. You know, what I'm seeing now, after looking at drawers and drawers, and albums, photographs, weddings, parties, vacations, graduations, a whole history of our culture is locked in, I guess, what they call the cloud.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is transient. Be mindful that these talismans, these treasures, are something to print some out, put them somewhere where they'll get to the next generation.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah. Yeah.
I think things must happen for a reason, because literally on our drive from Tryon Estates to this service this morning, my uncle's wife sent my sister a picture of my grandmother when she was maybe in her 60s. And so we have it right here. Her name was Patricia Ellen Nash. She became Patricia Nash Canode. My mother is Patricia Nash Canode, known by her nickname as Kitty. The special thing about my grandmother to me is that she spent all of her summers on an island in Wisconsin, on Lake Superior, called Madeline Island. And every summer, though we lived overseas for our first many years of our life, my mother would take us back to Madeline Island, and we would get to spend the entire summer there, and we would get to enjoy and spend time with my grandmother Canode. So just wanted to share.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. At coffee hour, you'll have to ask her to show you the picture because the resemblance with Kitty is really striking. Yeah. Yes?
It's interesting that you brought up the cloud because everybody thinks it's safe, but I just recently spent 6 weeks trying to retrieve all my contacts and photos from the cloud because for some reason it wouldn't recognize my passcode anymore.
Oh, no.
And it was pretty scary. It just got fixed yesterday, but for 6 weeks they had no idea what was going on or if I'd ever get it back again.
Ooh.
So I suggest everybody put it on a flash drive or something else as well, because the cloud is not as perfect.
Cloud is mortal. Yeah.
And I wanted to just share about my parents because they taught me so much about community service as being part of life. My dad, I think I've shared with you before, his favorite quote was, I kept saying somebody should do something, and then I realized I was somebody. And that's how I was brought up. And my mom, she always had lots of sayings. I guess I learned about accepting people because she would say, it is what it is. You know, you just have to accept these people. It is what it is. And then also accepting whatever life dealt you. She would say, if the cookie crumbles, just eat the crumbs.
I like that.
And her philosophy about life is when your number's up, your number's up.
Thank you. Yes?
Just had a quick comment about the cloud. I've been seeing online now there's some wags that are starting to call it the cloud of unknowing. The information goes in there
And who knows where it goes, yeah.
It's more like the fog of war.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Andy, what were you going to say?
Practically every month, if not more often, I think how lucky I have been. I was adopted, and I think what would have been in another family that weren't interested in the Spanish language or Latin America or Spain. And it took our family to a number of different places. And we speak Spanish today. We have so much to be thankful for our parents, our adopted parents.
Another beautiful testimony to their courage and their love. That's really touching. Thank you. Powerful stuff. Who else wants to share something about a loved one? You can just say a name if you'd like. If you don't want to wax on about it, you're free. We're welcome to do that. Yeah. Okay. Well, our ancestors have created a world into which we were born and passed on to us life's teachings and learnings, and our fallible human parents taught us many things, some of which we had to unlearn, some of which we had to double down in learning. They were human, they were mortal, but we remember them for the legacy they gave to us and how precious they are in our formation. You know, I hear that so many times people will say, you know, if this had happened just a little bit differently, you know, like your grandfather, if that had just happened just a little bit differently, I might not be here. Yeah, it's really incredible. But what a beautiful thing for us to celebrate the legacies of those who brought us to this point. I want to light the other candle I brought now. I'll tell you about it. This is a candle from the Latin poet Virgil, from the Aeneid, Book 7. Nulle diesum quam memori vos eximet anno. No day, forgive my Latin, it's been a while. The translation is, no day shall erase you from the memory of time. No day shall erase you from the memory of time. The love that we give is what lasts, and that love is eternal. That's what we remember the most from our ancestors. Sometimes we remember trauma too, but hopefully after a while the love is what surfaces, and realize that not all ancestors were, well, none of them were perfect, but you know, hopefully that whatever lessons we've learned from our ancestors, we pass that down to our children. The saying that really has captured my imagination in recent years is a quotation or a question from Jonas Salk, the guy who invented the polio vaccine, and he said, "What is my responsibility for peace in the world today? My responsibility is to become, our responsibility is to become better ancestors for our children. We take care of our grievances and our issues in our lifetime and don't expect them to fight our battles. And in doing so, we hand down to them a legacy of love." I have a poem I'd like to share, and then a song, and then we'll have some coffee. I know this has been a little bit heavy, but what a beautiful celebration of those who are important to us. This is a poem by Kathleen McTeague, also a Unitarian author. The title of it is called "They Are With Us Still." In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them we choose the deeper path of living.